Hi everyone, I'm going to present the social life cycle assessment, a selection of indicators for a prospective approach to the insertion of new technologies. My name is Edilene Pereira. I'm a PhD student at Rovira y Virgili University in Spain. For an introduction of the subject, today we have the challenge of assessing emerging activities, processes, or services in the field of LCA to evaluate the impacts that can be caused. Also, most LCA studies have some kind of future-oriented evaluation. Therefore, in LCA, there are studies evaluating ways to improve the environmental performance of a product at an early stage of development, and those studies are called prospective LCA. To date, Arvidsson proposed a prospective environmental LCA methodology, but nothing has been yet proposed for the social LCA. But what can we do about prospective social LCA? How to apply or develop a methodology for this area? As we said before, the option of prospective studies on social LCA has not been yet discussed, not even explored, and we understand that since social LCA is still a methodology in development, also it's very complex and the pathways between performance and impact are not so clear or not so well evaluated. So we understand the difficulties in the subject, but we also understand that we have a huge variety of indicators that can be used for this purpose of the prospective LCA studies in the social area. Prospective social CA methodology have a potential to be applied in diagnostic purpose as we're going to apply in this study. For understanding the social context involved in the sector where the new technology will be inserted, also for the construction of a baseline scenario that will be used to compare with the scenario after the insertion of the new technology, and for the improvement of the country's social context due to the new activities inserted. So, aiming to advance in the social assessment of new technologies, the goals of this work are a selection of existing indicators with a prospective view and the application of those indicators selected in different scenarios to test their feasibility in social CA studies. We performed the selection of indicators using four different studies. First, to take into account important impact subcategories. Also, to know the indicators that have been applied in the generic social CA studies that mostly use country average data for the indicators. And to understand how the new technologies have been assessed, consider their social performance, and finally, the selection of the indicators were used based on the methodological sheets proposed by the UNEP SETAC, that is the most important guideline for social CA. For the case study, we used the indicators from product databases as Amnesty International, International Labour Organization, World Bank, etc. And the indicators for those four countries, Brazil, Sweden, Spain, and the Netherlands, were associated to scores from 1 to 4 according to their performance. So for the countries who had the worst result for the indicators, they scored as 1, and who had the best result for the indicator, scored as 4. So, finally, 26 generic indicators, including positive, negative, qualitative, and quantitative indicators, were selected to be applied in prospective social CA studies to assess the potential social impacts caused on the 5 stakeholders: workers, local community, society, value chain actors, and consumers. For the workers, we selected 10 indicators, including the freedom of association and collective bargaining, women in the labor rate, social security expenditure, minimum wage, forced labor, country gender index, occupation accident rate, Gini coefficient, child labor, and regional inequalities. For the local community, we have national law and regulation, indigenous rights and conflicts, also land claims, immigrant human rights, security and human rights, pollution levels and rate of unemployment. For the society, the indicators selected were relevance of the considered sector, risk of corruption, sector efforts in the technology development. Also, the question, is the organization doing business in a country with ongoing conflicts, was selected, and the potential use of technology that causes harm to people or society. For the value chain actors, we only selected two indicators, national law and regulation and sectoral regulation. And finally, for the consumer, we select the existence of a mechanism to protect consumer privacy, strength of national legislation covering product disposal and recycling, and sector transparency rating. In some indicators, we consider the agricultural sector. For instance, for the potential use of the technology that causes harm to society, we used the deforestation index, and the agricultural GDP was used for the relevance of the considered sector for the local economy. The data used in this work was from 2005 to 2019, and the only indicator that we used data from different databases was the sector efforts in the technology development, that we used the data from OECD, for the European countries, and for Brazil, we take the data from IBDE, Brazilian institution. All indicators had available data to do a proper assessment. For the results of the case study carried out, Sweden scored best with 90, followed by the Netherlands, Spain, and Brazil with 49. Sweden scored best in the stakeholders, workers, and local community, and Brazil scored the worst in the stakeholders, workers, local community, and society. For the other stakeholders, the countries scored more or less the same. So, according to the results found in this work, when developing new products or technologies in Brazil, industry and companies will have a greater challenge in being better socially, specifically, to compensate for the country's social deficiency, especially for the workers and local community, trying to improve positive impacts that can be caused by the new technologies inserted. And as a trend in social LCA, few indicators have been selected for the value chain actors and consumers, mostly due to the lack of reliable data and good indicators. As conclusions of this work, we could see that the first steps towards prospective social LCA can be taken using well-known indicators provided by important organizations, for example, World Bank, ILO, etc. In this work, we used indicators for a generic prospective assessment, but we need further development to improve and adapt it to different sectors and activities. And since there is no standardized methodology in social CA, we have more freedom on those social assessments, but we have to take a very good care on the selection of the data and indicators to create valid social CA studies. So that's it. Thanks. And if you have any question, you can find me at this email.